This clothing brand has accused an artist they've worked with having AI in their art process, and all of this went down on Twitter, but you won't believe the conclusion. I had actually recorded the entire video, but then there was an update that was released 3 days ago that changed everything. And as a result of an update, all of the tweets were then taken down. So it really changed the trajectory of the content that I had originally filmed. So I am not going to post that original edited piece, and I am literally refilming the entire thing. Please forgive the format. All the tweets are gone. So I am using my recording of the original footage to grab the tweets. But the clothing brand in question is Ice-T Aesthetics, who goes by the handle Ice-T Clothing on Twitter. And this all started with a thread they made September 8th, 2024, writing, "We think that an artist we worked with and commissioned designs from sent us AI." And here is a photo of their Maki artwork that was commissioned by Ice-T Clothing. We initially purchased 5 artworks from Zuyu, who is the artist, and they became strong sellers in our store. These artworks feature Jujutsu Kaisen characters reimagined by Zuyu. They did well, and we decided to commission some additional pieces. During this commission process, it was brought to our attention that Zuyu may be using AI for his artworks, including those that he sold to us. As I am not a professional artist, I did not notice any of the discrepancies or signs of AI. So attached are screenshots of conversations of people pointing out potential AI tendencies. With redacted writing, I've just checked his page and he traces a lot of pictures and colors them digitally. The telltale sign is the shape of the 3D objects looking flat like the swords on the Witcher characters, or the hands having odd shapes, as he's just tracing digitally over actual pictures. It looks like he mixes in AI art with some tracing, but he couldn't even bother to clean them up. He's really good at coloring, but he's taking shortcuts for sure. Another DM writing, "By the way, my guy, about that art you purchased some time ago, including the Yuki one, I'm 99% sure that is overpainted AI art." And if you guys aren't an artist, that basically means somebody would generate an AI piece using, an AI bot and then paint. Ice-T continues, "Although I brushed off their accusations at first, I began to see what they were talking about. I had placed 3 additional commissions with Zuyu before I began suspecting that they are using AI. I changed the request to 1 commission, with the remaining 2 completed at a later date, and asked Zuyu for work in progresses on the single commission. The idea was to see the process and have proof that AI wasn't being used. I was sent some basic line art that looked more like traces." So here is the Masato piece, and then here is the work in progresses. And here, I know it's really small, but you can kind of see the work in progress where it is the finished sketch. And Ice-T was asking to change the pistol. Ice-T continues, "After digging in a bit deeper and checking out other commissions that Zuyu did for clients, I started finding other, more obvious AI traces and evidence. Now, of course, I am no artist, and my accusations may unfairly harm Zuyu, which is why I contacted them first. I had pointed out in my original recording, and I'll point it out again. I do like how fair I feel like Ice-T was being in acknowledging that due to them not being an artist, that their takes may not be fully accurate. So this is the conversation between the two. Zuyu writes, "Artists can make mistakes sometimes, and I saw threads regarding the issue with AI-generated/AI assistance art going around right now, and some of them would list something that common mistakes an artist could make. Call it skill issues or clumsiness, but it's a normal thing, but it's still a debatable thing nowadays. Some of us didn't have the privilege to go to an art school, including myself. I made my way up by studying, even sometimes tracing references in the past, which are very normal for artists, and I'm still learning to this day. I have no idea how to generate AI art, and I'm not that tech savvy, nor that I ever interested to use it because I know they look like shit and it harms real artists. I was one of the victims. I'm aware of the comments under your page saying that my art is AI generated, and I would be lying if it wasn't demotivating me in a way. The only way for me to 100% prove it is by setting up a camera and to do a time lapse of me showing the process from scratch, at least for the sketch and liner, according to some people's accusations, and I will do it soon in the future." Ice-T writes, "Hello, I completely understand what you mean. Any artwork can be overanalyzed and mistakes will be found. The main point is how you come up with the original line art. I and some other artists suspect that it's traced over AI and then colored in or textured. Some artists point out the line art you show in your progress. The lines are inconsistent, which they say is very common for people that trace. They also mention how you already loosely draw lines in the clothing for where the shadows will fall, which is very uncommon in tracing. I understand that it may be demotivating to hear that your art is AI. Unfortunately, in this climate, artists are forced to prove that they are not AI artists. I think that it is very important for you to do this. A time-lapse showing how you create the original sketch and line art will remove any belief in me that you are relying on AI. This will also be very helpful in convincing others that your work is legitimate. If you're able to do this to create a high quality work and show us the full process, then I will happily continue to work with you. This is important to me because your work resonates with my audience, but I simply cannot add AI to my store. My brand identity is built around supporting and collaborating with artists, and incorporating AI simply doesn't fit with the brand." By the way, I'm going to show you some of Zuyu's art pieces to kind of point out what people are talking about for those of you guys that are much more visual. I will say, again, please don't send hate to anybody. Please don't send hate to any artist, right? But I think the thing people are pointing out is the fact that that the lines are really sketchy. Do you see the line art? You can see a lot of sketching, a lot of breakage in the line work that people are pointing out to that being of tracing. Some accusations that Zuyu had received was that they are very capable of rendering at a high level, that the line work doesn't match up with the level of rendering. Now, some artists will have an art process in which they have a sketch, they clean up the sketch, and they use that sketch as their line art. So instead of going out of their way to then redraw the sketch with clean line art, they just clean up the sketch close enough and they're like, all right, good enough, and then they color on top of it. That is actually a process that many artists do use, but it is not as common. Most artists do choose to redraw the line work to do clean line art. And this is like a close-up where you can see more of the sketchiness in the line work. Ice-T continues, I received no response to the final message and suggestion. I can understand that Zuyu isn't obliged to my suggestions, but as this is a serious accusation, I expect a response or counter suggestion, especially given that I am a client that has spent over 1,000 in commissions. We work with dozens of artists and understand the controversy with AI-generated art. We don't want our brand associated with it. We want to build a reputation as a brand that works with and supports independent artists. Before removing Zuyu's works and asking for a refund, we want to hear some wider opinions. And here are what some commenters had to say. Ryan wrote, this is how I find out one of my favorite artists use AI. Wait till you watch the full video before coming to a conclusion, by the way. But Ice-T writes, yeah, put me in a bad spot for a bit too, haha. This is all written as of around September 8th, before more information came out. Now, this was the piece that was commissioned for Ice-T aesthetics. A lot of people were accusing this piece of AI for a couple of reasons. One, because the perspective of the sword is a little bit awkward. Due to this hilt here, it looks like the blade extends fully into the hilt, but it should actually stop a little bit further out. And the second thing is the 3 fingers on this hand, which is the biggest glaring giveaway. And I pointed it out in my original recording. As an artist, that is definitely really awkward for many reasons, right? If you were to hold a sword or something through your fingers like this, you would have 4 fingers visible and your thumb if you would hold it. The thumb would still actually protrude upwards, which is not present. And then secondly, also, if you were to say, oh, maybe, the fingers are hidden, it doesn't make sense, because why would you straddle a sword between your index and your middle finger like this, right? That could explain why you would only see 3 fingers, right? If this was a bit longer, my screwdriver, but it's a bit of an awkward perspective. So it makes a lot of sense. It does make sense as to why people thought it looked weird. Let me put it that way. My one criticism, and okay, this is me as an outsider throwing in my 2 cents, right? Is the hands do look jank. And this is why people initially thought this was AI. Because for this finger, like the first joint of the finger is much thinner than the rest of the fingers. It just looks a bit awkward, and the incorrect number of fingers. So here's the thing, right? Artists make mistakes. I have made a previous video about an artist who drew Viet Hatsune Miku and they gave them 6 toes, okay? Sometimes it happens. Really rarely, right? But it will sometimes happen. You miscount the fingers or something like that. You miscount the toes. For me, this is just a commission piece for a brand that has commissioned you for over $1,000 worth of artwork. I would have put a little bit more due diligence, I feel like, into making sure the art piece was looking clean before I sent it over to the person that commissioned me. That's just me. I do think the rest of the render, gorgeous, right? Love the skin render, everything, but the hands just look a little bit awkward. And the thing is, I'm not trying to say this to like bully the artist, whatever. It's because this artist is actually capable of drawing very nice looking hands. We can see in their other pieces, this one, like this pose here, they are actually capable of drawing hands that look good in different pieces. So that's why to me, it was just a little bit odd that this is a commission piece, but the hands just are not up to the caliber they're capable of drawing according to their other art pieces. Or even like here, right? This is a very complex pose to hold the sword. The hands look, very nice here. Also, I do want to point out a piece of misinformation that was floating around when this controversy first happened. This Twitter user had pointed out a tweet that Zuyu had made. And the tweet was by Zuyu on December 12, 2022. Zuyu wrote, left knockoff AI generation of my work, write mine. Here is the AI generation that was generated by somebody called Inkrat or something. And this was Zuyu's original piece. So I think some people saw that and then assumed that Zuyu took this AI generated piece and redrew it and completely traced it. Critical thinking online just doesn't exist, I suppose. No, it clearly is that this person took Zuyu's artwork and ran it through AI. A couple of things, right? Again, you can tell because AI took the things that Zuyu drew and then made it into very AI-esque things. Like 1, the detailing on the pants don't make very much sense. 2, the biggest one, this was supposed to be like a sliver of skin on her thigh that was visible. The AI made it into this really weird like metal armor looking plating thing, and the hands were missing. What do you mean Zuyu took this weird looking piece and then was like, okay, instead of having armor, I'm gonna draw some of her thigh visible. Instead of having this weird whatever detailing, I'm not gonna trace that. I'm instead gonna draw something else in there, right? Zuyu had a keychain going here. Zuyu's piece clearly makes a lot more sense than the AI piece does. So it doesn't, Zuyu's piece came first, basically. I'm just trying to clear that up because that was floating around during this initial tweet. 2 days later, Ice-T made another thread. So they wrote, before we continue the accusations, I want to note that we did not expect such enormous reach on our original thread. Due to this reach, we feel that we have a responsibility to make our case and evidence clear. We also want to reiterate that although we confidently suspect Zuyu of tracing over AI at best and / or using AI and then retouching it at worst, we do not have a smoking gun. Therefore, we want to provide Zuyu with the ability to make their side heard. More on that later. We provided incomplete evidence in the original thread. This time we will provide in-depth breakdowns and images, starting with our original commission of Misato. So here is the little document writing, I have gathered some basic references for the Misato piece. The requirements are basic. I want her to be wearing the black dress that is underneath her red jacket. I want the red jacket to be half on, half off. And I want her to be holding a weapon, ideally a gun, make her look dangerous and sexy. So this was the DM that Ice-T had sent Zuyu, and a reference photo of Misato, another reference photo of Misato, and this was Zuyu's completed art piece. So here are some more DMs between the two, with Zuyu writing, hey, a heads up, you can expect to get the sketch later today, and they showed the sketch. And then Ice-T had asked for the gun to be changed because Misato's gun is a pistol. And they point out that the first sketch had an odd 1800s German gun. Yeah, it was like a revolver. And Ice-T writes, here's what we deem suspicious enough to start questioning. 2 zippers on the jacket, AI-style gun in the original trace. If you see the jacket, this is what they're pointing out, right? Here is one zipper, and then here is a second one. I will say, after looking at that, it does look really weird to me. It truly does, actually. Know what reference photo they potentially used for a jacket to get 2 pieces like that, right? Like here. Because even in Misato's artwork, they would only be like one panel of clothing on this side. It looks like she has a really thin red cardigan on and then a jacket over it to make it double layered like this. And then here's more information that Ice-T provides. They add, Gen AI is bad with guns and often elongates the barrel and blobs the weapons. Example of AI-generated anime girls with guns. Image writes, note the stylization and barrel shape of the handguns. And yeah, you can see these guns are really, really jank looking. In the first photo, her finger is like into the gun. There is no trigger on the gun also, and the barrel is like stagnated. It looks like Russian nesting dolls that can collapse in on each other. The second one, she has 5 fingers, but then a finger protrudes out of where the trigger should be. This gun, the barrel is just very long and jank looking, and this one, the barrel isn't even pointed in the right direction. Ice-T is pointing out that the hand grip and the barrel look similar. I would say the hand grip is pretty standard for somebody that is wielding a gun, but this gun does look more like a revolver with the barrel than a pistol. And maybe the Zuyu does not know Evangelion, right? But I mean, I haven't really watched Evangelion. I've only watched like 4 episodes, but Misato is always featured with a pistol. And even in the reference art that Ice-T had presented Zuyu, Misato also had a pistol. But maybe there was just a miscommunication. Maybe Zuyu just used our creative freedom because the gun wasn't explicitly specified. But down here were more examples of AI generated girls with guns with very, very cylindrical looking barrels, ones that you would often find more with a revolver. And then Ice-T adds, this Nanami piece has 2 ends to the shirt, multiple collar leaves, the fingers of unnatural proportions, the nails too, it's missing a finger knuckle. So this is the Nanami piece. And you can see a lot of tendencies that you would find more common with AI. So this is labeled as minor evidence with 2 ends on the shirt, 1, 2, which is the same problem with the jacket ends. No middle finger knuckle. Yeah, it would maybe stick out here. Inconsistent finger size, and then the minor evidence of the 2 collar leaves. For me, this piece does throw me off a little bit too. And the reason being, actually, it's none of the evidences that were pointed here. It is the fingers that is holding allegedly what should be his cigarette. He is smoking a cigarette, except you can see the cigarette is in his mouth, which also looks a little bit broken, right? It's like cut in the middle. But his fingers are lined up with the lapel of his jacket rather than where the cigarette is. Look, I don't smoke cigarettes, right? But I'm guessing if you were smoking a cigarette, you would hold the cigarette. I don't know, right? I don't smoke, but something, you would probably hold it. That's what I'm guessing. The fingers actually line up almost perfectly with the lapel of the jacket rather than the cigarette that's actually in his mouth. So here this throws me off because AI does have a tendency to do that, right? It will recognize objects or things, line it up inappropriately. So again, the fingers should be holding the cigarette, I'm guessing, right? Because it's posed as if it should be holding something. But but it's actually lined up with the lapel of the jacket pretty evenly. Also, in this piece, the final thing that actually threw me off this piece, the Nanami piece specifically, is that if you look at Nanami's character design, right, he wears a blue button down with a blazer, a tan blazer, and brown suspenders. He does not have a vest on. You can see his blazer is hanging off one shoulder, but I'm curious as to what this is supposed to be. There's a thin strap here that maybe is his suspender. It could be, but then there's no suspender on the other side. But then it's also not his jacket. His jacket is long sleeved, but this looks like it's a vest or a suspender of some sort. But it could be a vest, but then we don't see it on the other side as well. And also in Nanami's character design, he does not wear a vest. Doesn't mean that artistically you can obviously choose to put a vest on him, but just it doesn't match up with what's going on the right side of the Nanami piece. For me, that also threw me off as well when I was looking at the Nanami piece. The jacket label here actually, and him holding the cigarette. That was just me when I was looking through this evidence that was presented. And then point number 3, Ice-T writes, this Makima nun piece deleted after the last tweet has the classic 6 fingers and very similar colors and values as this other AI generated picture of a red-haired nun. So as you can see, the colors were selected off of the AI piece and it basically matches up very similarly to the colors of this nun. Of course, AI is trained off of human artists, so same color palette, and then if the AI trains off of them, then the AI would end up using the same color palette as well. AI does have a tendency to use a very specific color palette. They always use really, really saturated colors. The colors are always really bright for the most part, and there is a lot of really bright colors. Some of that is featured in the Nanami or in the Makima nun piece as well. And then here it's writing that there's 5 fingers plus 1 thumb. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it likely could be. It could also be, you know, this could be the thumb and then these could be the other fingers. I don't necessarily see how there could be 5. Maybe depending on how you interpret it, but I do feel like the finger counting is a bit of a stretch, right? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. It does look a bit awkward, but that definitely could just be the thumb, you know, like if you hold it like that. The color selection, in my opinion, isn't the evidence. The one thing that throws me off this piece, I don't want you guys to hear this video and be like, oh my God, like my art is going to be scrutinized at this level, da 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 da. The only reason I think that Ice-T is scrutinizing Zuyu's art this much is because there was so much accusations of AI. If Ice-T were to come out and say, oh, this artist used AI, they need to provide substantial proof. So looking at the art pieces, you definitely though can be biased in looking, and because you are looking for aspects of AI, it would then bias you, pick and choose things that look AI. You know what I mean? When looking at the pieces to look for AI evidence, we also in turn have to keep an eye out for evidence that would indicate it was made by a human to keep our biases as unclouded as possible. The colors, honestly, I can see also why you would be like, oh, this is using AI colors, but not gonna lie, a nun wears black and white, and there's only so much you can work with in the realm of working with black and white colors. I think matching the grays and the blacks is also a bit of a stretch. I will say the one thing on this piece that throws me off is the fact that there are what looks like 3 necklaces potentially, but only 2 chains. There's this chain here, the long one for this cross. There's a rosary chain that seems to be going into her boobs, but then there's this other cross here. Is that maybe the charm of the rosary? I'm not sure. That was the one thing that threw me off about this piece specifically, but it's again a really, really minor thing. Ice-T adds, this Asa Yoru piece, the image has also been deleted after a first thread, has inconsistent emerging skulls with the ground. The hand looks malformed. In the image, it adds the skull teeth merges into the background elements in an identical fashion to that of generated AI. This image was deleted by Zuyu. Row of teeth absent, amazing form, but still inconsistent in some areas with the feature of the hands. I will say, for me, this also looks very suspicious. I'm gonna be honest, the background. My suspicions is not with the actual illustration of the character, but the background. Because AI has a tendency to have elements melt into other elements that they shouldn't overlap like that, right? I do think it's very convenient that there is a skull head here and there happens to be indents into the wood. Conveniently does also look like teeth for a skull. And it conveniently lines up with the shape of the skull. Same thing with this skull down here, where you can see there's the upper jaw of the skull, and then conveniently it lines up really, really, really well with the indentation and breakage of the wood. It again is a tendency that you will find in AI art. Can humans do this too? Yes. It's one of those where it's a little bit odd. Ice-T adds, this Tifa piece has an inaccurate gauntlet, inaccurate skirt pockets, and the hair strands get spiky and detached from the natural flow. This piece does look a little suspicious. It does, to me. Just throwing my own opinions. Again, I'm not accusing necessarily Zuyu of using AI because none of these are an actual smoking gun, right? We don't have an AI generated image that we can look at and be like, wait, Zuyu literally traced this. We can't see any of it. We don't have any of that to go off of. There are elements in this piece that do look like things AI has done. So the first thing that Ice-T is pointing out is the the inaccuracies in the design elements. So here with the gauntlet, as you can see, it juts outwards. It should just like flow with the elbow. It doesn't stick out like a little tag, but it's sticking out here. This could be human error. Maybe Zuyu isn't as familiar with Tifa's costume design and just thought it was gonna behave this way. There are also pockets, large bags on the side of the skirt, that is missing. Again, maybe they just didn't realize that that was there. Maybe they forgot. Could have happened, right? The hair though, this hair element is a bit odd to me because there is this right here, the red thing that's circled, the thing that juts out. This is something that you'll find with AI. AI will tend to make disconnected hair pieces that will stick out or like appear when it shouldn't appear, right? Hey, this is a strand of hair, but it is detached on both ends. Your hair is always attached on one end. It's attached to your head. This is a bit odd. Some people could argue it's a stylistic choice, but you often don't find it in Zuyu's other pieces. It just happens in this Tifa piece specifically. And one other thing that was not mentioned, but that I think does look a bit AI is this hands. And I know we're going on the hands again. It's because the hand is curled, right? But then there's this thing that sticks out here. And it looks like it was supposed to maybe be a thumb, right? Her hand is curled. It looks like it was supposed to be a thumb, but it's too blocky to be a thumb. So it looks like some sort of like buckle element that sticks out of her skirt. But Tifa's skirt also does not have a buckle element that appears. So AI, like I mentioned prior, has a tendency to make one thing blend into another, like the skull teeth blending into the wood. Allegedly, it could have been AI, who knows, right? But AI has a tendency to do that. So that's why when I see this, it just looks awkward to me because the buckle is not something that is featured in her skirt, like that buckle sticking up above the waistband, that is. But it lines up perfectly to where it could also be her thumb. That's why it just throws me off a little bit. Again, it's just one element, like one little thing here, one other little thing here. The final thing about this piece that is just a little bit odd to me is the fact that there's like one line straight across her boob. She has like, stretching with the clothing, but that is just a little bit odd. Again, they're just little things, right? But it does kind of add up a little bit. So Ice-T continues, his gallery has shrunk because of post-deletion. He has not replied to me or other artist messages and or emails sent to him a month and a half ago. And this was tweeted September 10th. So here are emails that people like Antwolf have sent Zuyu. And then this was some DMs between Ice-T and Zuyu on July 14th, 2021. So this was like 2 months ago, where Zuyu writes, "Hi, firstly, I want to apologize for any trouble or confusion caused regarding the authenticity of my artwork. I understand it might have appeared AI generated, but I assure you it's just pure flaws in my way of making them. Sometimes I left mistakes like the Maki one because if I was actually using AI, I would not let that slide since it's very fixable. But I realized it afterwards. For Nanami's hand, that's not 6 fingers. That's just how it looks. When you sort of make a fist, you'd have a little bump on the side of your pinky. I use my own hand as a reference. Then the Yoru one, I didn't even pay attention to it until you bring that up. If I'm being honest, drawing a background was never really my thing. So I threw a bunch of stuff so she seems like she's sitting on a pile of skulls. Most of the time, I don't know what I'm doing. As long as it looks cool to me, I'll just call it a day." Ice-T continues, "I remind everybody that I am no artist myself. I relied on the expertise of multiple artists and they all shared my suspicions. Artists in questions are Mikey Pie Art, T.I. Keep, Antwolf, and others that prefer to stay anonymous to avoid controversies. Here's what Mikey says." So Mikey writes, "My diagnoses, I feel there's a lot of confusion at the moment because of the lack of evidence. So what I think is the case with Zuyu's art is the following. His pieces aren't simply AI generated. I think he generates a piece, draws liner over it with a textured brush to give it a human feel. I think the painting part is either done by following the AI as a reference too much or simply overpainting the actual generated image. Either way, there is definitely some manual work in here and it's not 100% AI. We just think his art is heavily reliant on Gen AI. What makes this case so difficult is that he's definitely put in some serious work to learn to draw, judging from his posts from years ago. So this makes it easier for him to hide it. One of the biggest giveaways is the difference of quality within the piece. The super professional looking anatomy, clothing, shading, etc., but more amateurish hands, perspective, chicken scratchy lines, which is common in tracing, and a variety of beginner mistakes here and there. I think this is the case because when he generates an image, it'll have flaws that have to be fixed manually. And this really shows in most of his work because he can't match the quality of AI with his own skills." And then Mikey mentions that he has difficulty with the sketches because the sketches always look exactly the same as the final product, where there's kind of like no exploration, etc. I have mentioned prior that there are some people who will use the sketch, clean it up, and that is literally the line art they use. It is something people do, but basically in presenting evidence of not being AI, Ice-T wanted to see the sketches, but all Zuyu had sent was the final sketch, the cleaned up sketch. And I think Ice-T was looking for the exploration prior to the final sketch, which wasn't presented at this point. And here's an example of, I think, what Ice-T was looking for, this exploration. And this is an example by Alice Vu for her Viet Miku piece, which ended up having 6 toes. But in my armchair detective conclusion, I really don't think Alice used AI because there's too many things that shows that it was done by a human being. But these explorative sketches. So Mikey continues, I want to make it clear again, there is no smoking gun, like we didn't catch them in the act. Most of Zuyu's pieces really feel like they were made by closely tracing and color picking AI art. They seem to have made the switch from closely referencing IRL pics that you then have to stylize to closely tracing and copying Gen AI with minor changes. My suspicions were made stronger when we found out more discrepancies in many pieces, like missing fingers, more fingers, less knuckles, more knuckles, 2 jacket ends, 2 shirt ends, etc. Just stuff that you rarely F up as an artist. It does happen, right? Like Alice accidentally gave Miku an extra toe, but it doesn't happen too often. To have this many in such a short amount of time is like the YouTuber dream, and it's blaze rods and ender pearls. You don't get this lucky this many times consecutively. No artist ever forgets the time when they drew the thumb on the wrong side, forgot a finger, or added a finger. It's a mistake you rarely do twice and never many times close to the other. To explain what feels wrong in Zuyu's pieces is that if you look from afar, they look really good. They exhibit a form in their design, silhouette, color choice, and shading that is like pro level. It's really good illustrations. However, looking closer at the lines of the paint strokes, they don't exhibit the same confidence as the final piece in whole at all. And Ice-T adds some alleged lighter evidence. So one being the glossy high contrast look, which as you can see, very high contrast on the boobs, very high contrast on the boobs, shoulder highlighting that you can see in this AI as well. This is a design choice that some artists make. Some artists just abuse highlights like no tomorrow. I actually am one of those people, but it is also something you find in AI. Another thing is exaggerated folds, especially within the eyebrows, which is also present in Nanami. But it's also something that is present in people's faces in general. Nowhere near as exaggerated as AI, but you'll find that like scrunch between the eyebrows sometimes. Another piece of evidence is a bump that goes out and then back in but hair also goes in front of it. So is that the jacket? Is that like a dog ear that sticks out? I just think, again, yeah, this looks a little bit odd because you can see the sleeve very clearly here, detailed and outlined, but then there's this triangle that sticks out. So I think maybe this was done in an attempt to make the jacket look bulky, but it does look a little bit out of place. Ice-T, or in this photo explanation, it adds that Gen AI tends to base itself on similar poses, side-by-side poses of them just kind of like stanced up with their legs slightly apart. I will say this is just a pose that people can do in general. Like Gen AI is trained off human artists. People pose like this in photos all the time. So I think this on its own is not evidence to me. So Ice-T continues, now it is possible that these are all human errors, and however cynical and sarcastic I could get with the fingers, knuckle, shirt ends, exact colors, hair strands, etc., I cannot say with 100% certainty that Zuyu traces Gen AI. It's possible that we have incorrectly tarnished their reputation. For this reason, I want to offer Zuyu 500 USD to get in a call with us and stream his process live in full screen, and will be recorded and scrutinized from point A to Z. So the process that Ice-T wrote out is 1, to draw something he would normally draw from a prompt we give him after the call starts. 2, to do specific and odd actions in Photoshop and in his computer at different parts of the process, like draw a red circle with a red star inside, or Google a cartoon cat. 3, slightly deviate from the original prompt as the time-lapse goes to ensure he's not drawing from a pic off screen previously generated. Point 5, completely forgot point 4. This is just funny. In Chinese, 4 is superstitious because it is pronounced s, but death is pronounced as s. So it sounds really similar. So 4 is superstitious because it kind of means death in Chinese culture. I am guessing Zuyu is Chinese, so I don't know if that was intentional, but anyways. 5, explain his thoughts as he draws. 6, start over with new guidelines if he gets disconnected, in quotes, or if there's any discrepancy in the process. I like these terms. I do think if you are accused of AI and you're not using AI, this is an easy, free $500 right here, because I can do all of this. Ice-T adds, should this be done and turned out legit, I'll accept to pay damages of up to 1K or more to Zuyu and apologize publicly with another thread of proof he's innocent, as the previous have garnered great reach and it only feels fair. At the time of this thread, we still confidently suspect Zuyu of misleading his clients by using AI for their works, which damages and hurts the latter. We invite them to prove us wrong, in which case, again, we will pay damages and apologize. Thank you for reading, and I look forward to hearing everybody's thoughts. And Ice-T adds, finally, this isn't the first time he's called out. And this is a tweet that was made by Seiko on Twitter, who wrote, is this really just a reference? So on top, we have Zuyu's piece, but as you scrub back and forth like this, you can see that Zuyu completely traced the body, the torso of an art piece from a different artist. So yeah, it is basically completely traced, and this art piece was actually made by another artist. And the artist handle is Bloody Benny. So then after all of that, on September 11th, Zuyu had dropped this. Zuyu dropped an art piece and a speed paint of them doing it. So it is a recording from the side of the computer screen where they pull up the reference, they put it to the side, and they show themselves painting it as the piece zooms in. Midway through, they will then cut to the screen lapse recording of their drawing program to show the sketching process. Then it will go back to the side camera view and then cut back to the main piece. But basically, they show their art process, how they draw from beginning to ends, as you can see here. I will say, right, I like how they drop this, but when it was dropped during all of the accusations, a lot of people felt that this video did not prove it enough, mainly because of all the cuts, actually. I do get that maybe they wanted to do the different camera angles to make it more interesting to watch, whatever, but the whole point was to prove that, hey, you know, you drew without AI to give us the art process, but because of all the cuts, those would be, for skeptics, opportunities for them to think that maybe, I don't know, you used AI at some point in the process, then like cropped it out and back to the piece, you know what I mean? It didn't satisfy a lot of people, and they also wrote this doc as well. They wrote, "Hi everyone, I said this 2 days ago on my Instagram, but I'd like to add some more, so once again, I'd like to address some accusations regarding my artwork being AI generated. First and foremost, these claims are false. Every piece of my work is hand-drawn, and I pour a lot of time and effort into creating each one. I understand, however, some might mistake my art for AI generation due to certain imperfections, such as misleading fingers or knuckles that resemble AI's notorious flaws. One area where this confusion tends to arise is when I'm drawing hands, especially in complex poses like grabbing or when viewed from challenging angles. Like many artists, hands have always been a tricky part of the process for me. I thought it was a common struggle, but apparently this had led some to assume it's an AI issue. While AI-generated hands often appear far more distorted or monstrous, I can see how my occasional errors might raise questions. I'll also admit that while I was still learning, I did use photo references and sometimes traced elements as part of my study to better understand shape and form. I couldn't afford formal art education, so I taught myself however I could. My skills improved and I found my own flow, but I never aimed for perfection. My goal has always been growth. Do I still heavily rely on references today? Absolutely. Did I ever trace in the past? Yes. That was part of my learning process. I must admit it may have lacked ethical consideration, but that's for me to learn moving forward. I never claimed to be a pro. I am just a novice who gained popularity by drawing people's favorite characters, and to those who follow my journey, I still struggle to draw from scratch in memory, unlike many artists here perhaps. I still have to gather as much information as I need only to create a single piece. These small imperfections are part of my journey as an artist, and I believe they are a natural part of my human process. I will make an effort to be more transparent about my use of references and share more process videos moving forward. It's incredibly disheartening to be accused of something you don't even fully understand, and I wouldn't wish this experience on any other artist, especially these days. I hope that by sharing my experience, others can avoid going through the same thing. These past few days have been incredibly rough. I never imagined people would go so far as to tell me to end my life or call me names. Because of this, I've decided to take a break to heal. It's been mentally exhausting, and I need time to recover. I'm not sure how long this break will be. I may come back or I may not, but if I do return, I hope to come back as a better person and an artist. Thank you for taking the time to read this, and I hope my actions moving forward will clear up any doubts. Again, sorry for the chaos." They also added, "P.S. I've seen some people questioning why I archived my Nanmakima and Yoru. I archived those two because I knew people would come at me because they have the same mistakes as the Makimon. I wanted Yoru to sit on a pile of skulls. The truth is, I have no idea what I'm doing. There's a reason why I don't draw backgrounds, and when I do, I usually just throw in blurred stock photos, or I would just add random stuff. I just wanted to be done with that piece and call it a day. I said the same thing to that brand a while ago. Also, I archived it because that piece alone already has its own drama, with some people thought I was sexualizing a minor, while in my head I was drawing Yoru, not Asa. Same as how we separate Yuji and Sakuna, but I understand their concerns, which is why I archived it. I just won't put up with the harassment. I didn't try to hide my error. The Maki one is still there, and it's the same thing anyways. The whole thing is just about my lack of skills, honestly. And from what I've seen, these accusations about me using AI are either based off my simple mistake or artistic choice. This isn't about AI errors or oversight. Sometimes these are conscious design decisions made to help the character stand out. When I show my process video, my goal was just to demonstrate my workflow from sketch to finish, highlighting how I maintain consistency in both line of work and style across my different artworks. So after that, Ice-T Aesthetics drops a final thread writing, "We accuse an artist of selling us traced AI. Accusations, apology, compensation, and fundraiser." And this was tweeted out September 13th. Ice-T writes, "On the 8th of September, we wrote a thread suspecting Zuyu of selling us AI traced and generated works. We provided our evidence to support our allegations. This included no response to our many messages, DMs, and emails, extra or missing fingers in his designs, and other errors in his designs that are similar to those found in Gen AI. To our surprise, the thread received millions of views. Our account barely had 100 followers. Zuyu deleted some of his designs, which led us to believe we got him. Due to this research, we started a second thread to back up our accusations. We got in contact with Zuyu to arrange a live stream. There, Zuyu finally responded to us and began providing his evidence. After reviewing the evidence provided by Zuyu, we were able to resolve our previous concerns and have decided to dismiss our earlier suspicions. Although Zuyu admits to tracing some work in the past, we do not think that such a minor sin warrants the destruction of his reputation or the immense stress that we put him through over the last few days. For this reason, I, Alexander Ally, owner of Ice-T Aesthetics, formally and genuinely apologizes to Zuyu for seriously hurting their reputation and putting them under immense stress. Our evidence was circumstantial and incomplete. As mentioned in the previous thread, we were ready to pay Zuyu $500 to get on a live stream with us, where we will test his art skill and an additional $1,000 as compensation should we be proven wrong. The amount of $1,500 has been sent to Zuyu's PayPal with the screenshot. Ice-T adds, Zuyu once mentioned that he wishes he could afford to purchase an iPad, so I am gifting him an iPad. My personal way of telling him to keep pursuing his art. I understand that reputational damage cannot be quantified with dollars, so I ask you to share this thread to ensure this apology receives the same exposure as the accusation threads. It will greatly help in healing Zuyu's reputation. Lastly, to celebrate Zuyu's art, I republished his designs and created a collection for them all. All profit made off Zuyu's designs with this link will go to Zuyu. I have given Zuyu access to my dashboard and he has access to the numbers and sales. So here are examples of the collection featuring the Nanami artwork, the Maki artwork, and the Misato artwork, as well as Nobara, Toji, and Yuki. Ice-T finishes, I am happy that this thread has gotten a good ending. Zuyu feels much better now, and I am much happier having to pay him knowing that he's legit rather than not paying him knowing that he isn't. Thank you for reading. And Zuyu writes, I really appreciate for the respectful approach to the whole session. I hope we all learned something from this. Personally, I learned it quite the hard way for the past days, but glad there's no beef left between two parties. Wish you all the success, and everybody please be kind. Ice-T writes, thank you, Zuyu. Looking forward to seeing what you can do with the iPad. And here's what some commenters have to say. Diana adds, I have such admiration for people who do not shy away from apologizing due to previous misunderstandings. Ice-T says, thank you. And Vampire Nabi adds, all compliments to you for actually apologizing, making a thread, and compensate him for all this stressful situation. People were going insane on Instagram responding to every comment, telling everyone his art was AI generated. It was sad to me. I can't imagine what Zuyu felt. Ice-T says, thank you. I can't imagine how stressful it must have felt. Himitsu writes, amazing how small of a reach this post has instead of the other. The internet is a cruel place. Even with this, most people who saw the first post will never see this one. And Funny Little Queer writes, that's what they titled their Twitter handle, you truly suck. It's cool this artist accepted your apology and money. If it were me, I'd tell you to shove it up your butt and sue you. Maybe don't accuse someone publicly without hard proof and only assumptions. Handle that shit in private, attention. So that is the end of that scenario, a case where an artist was accused of using AI and then later proven to have not used AI in their processes. This is a crazy scenario, but in the end, for Ice-T Aesthetics, I'm glad that they stood up and truly apologized for this situation. And for Zuyu, I feel so bad because I mean, this is something that's going to cause damage to your reputation at the end of the day. And regardless of this apology going out and happening, at the end of the day, there's going to be people out here who did not see the final concluding thread and will arrive at the conclusion that Zuyu is an AI user. This is a situation that is really unfortunate. If you like Zuyu's artwork, you like what you saw, you can go check them out. Their handle is Zuyuanzar, which is the handle they use on, from what I could find, all of their social medias. I'll also have them linked down below as well, so you can go check them out. But I'm curious as to your thoughts on this scenario. Should Ice-T Aesthetics have not made that original call out post in the first place? But what if it was a scenario where the other person was not responding to you and these accusations were coming out? Do you think this conclusion was satisfactory? Do you think Zuyu has grounds to sue? Because that's what some people are also saying. I'm curious as to your thoughts down below. And if you like this video, I appreciate it if you like and subscribed. And also, I stream on Twitch 3 days a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, Saturdays at 6 p.m. PT. So I hope to catch you guys there or in another one of my videos.